The late afternoon sun spilled through the sheer curtains of the Harper home, casting warm patterns on the polished wooden floor. Angela Harper adjusted her pearl necklace in the hallway mirror, her hands steady despite the storm inside her. She was the picture of grace, a devoted wife, a loving mother, but Angela had secrets. Secrets that had taken root and grown into something she could no longer ignore. The doorbell rang, breaking the silence. Angela took a deep breath and opened the door, her heart racing. Standing there was Daniel, her personal trainer, his casual smile and athletic build impossible to resist. Next to him stood Ethan, her charismatic coworker, whose smooth confidence had drawn her in from the moment they'd met. She hesitated, but only for a moment, before stepping aside to let them in. Angela led them to the living room, her movements deliberate, her words hushed. The room was filled with an electric tension as the three of them drew closer, their connection undeniable. It was a tangled mess of passion, danger, and secrecy. Angela knew this was risky, knew the stakes were impossibly high, but the pull was too strong to resist. Unbeknownst to them, Angela's daughter, Emily, had returned home earlier than expected. From the top of the staircase, Emily stood frozen, her heart pounding as she looked down at the scene unfolding below. Her mother, the woman she had trusted more than anyone, was locked in a forbidden embrace with two men. Emily's breath caught in her throat, and she backed away, her foot hitting the edge of a loose floorboard. The creak echoed through the house. Angela stiffened, her head snapping toward the stairs. Her eyes widened in horror as she saw Emily's face, pale and full of shock, staring back at her. "Emily." Angela's voice cracked, but the teenager didn't respond. Emily turned and fled to her room, slamming the door behind her. The sound reverberated through the house, leaving Angela in stunned silence. Inside her room, Emily leaned against the door, her chest heaving with ragged breaths. Tears streamed down her face as betrayal twisted her insides. How could her mother do this? How could she destroy the family so carelessly? The image of Angela with Daniel and Ethan burned into Emily's mind, each detail fueling her growing anger. By the time the sun had set, Emily's sorrow had hardened into something sharper. Sitting on her bed, clutching her phone, she replayed the scene in her mind over and over. It wasn't just her mother who had betrayed her, it was Daniel and Ethan, too. They had all conspired to destroy the life she thought was perfect. "They think they can get away with this," Emily muttered under her breath, her voice trembling with fury. "But they're wrong. They'll pay for what they've done." Emily opened her laptop and began searching for answers. She would find out everything, every hidden secret, every skeleton in their closets. Angela, Daniel, and Ethan had played with fire, but they hadn't counted on Emily. She would make sure their world burned. Emily barely slept that night. The betrayal had transformed her, fueling a fire inside her that burned brighter with every passing hour. When morning came, she was no longer the naive daughter who blindly trusted her mother. She was a woman with a plan. Angela tried to act as if nothing had happened. At breakfast, she moved around the kitchen with a forced smile, placing a plate of pancakes in front of Emily. "Good morning, sweetheart," Angela said, her tone overly sweet, like sugar hiding bitterness. Emily didn't respond. She stared at her mother, her eyes cold. Angela's smile faltered, but she said nothing. Silence hung between them like a storm cloud. When Angela finally left the house to run errands, Emily sprang into action. Her first target was Daniel. Emily knew where he worked, the upscale gym where Angela had insisted on getting a personal trainer 6 months ago. She pulled up the gym's social media pages, scrolling through posts and tagged photos. It didn't take long to find what she was looking for. Daniel loved attention, and his online presence was filled with photos of himself posing with clients, showing off his physique. Emily smirked. "You're going to regret being so public," she muttered. She created a fake social media account, using a stock photo of an attractive woman as the profile picture. Then, she sent Daniel a message, feigning interest in his services. "Within minutes," he replied, eager to set up a meeting. Emily's stomach churned at his flirty tone, but she reminded herself this was just the beginning. Next, she turned her focus to Ethan. He was trickier. Angela had always been vague about her work, but Emily remembered the name of the consulting firm where her mother worked. After a quick search, she found Ethan's profile on the company website. His polished smile and carefully curated bio made Emily's skin crawl. Digging deeper, she found a few mentions of him in local business articles. One mentioned an upcoming networking event he was hosting at a downtown bar. Perfect. Emily made a note of the date and time. As the day stretched on, Emily worked tirelessly, piecing together more details about Daniel and Ethan. She discovered Daniel had a girlfriend, one who often commented on his posts with hearts and adoring messages. Does she know? Emily wondered aloud, feeling a grim satisfaction at the idea of exposing him. Ethan, on the other hand, had a reputation as a ladies' man. A few posts from disgruntled former co-workers hinted at inappropriate behavior, though none of the accusations were public. Emily saved screenshots of everything she found, her arsenal growing by the minute. By the time Angela returned home that evening, Emily had a plan. She greeted her mother with a forced smile, playing the role of the obedient daughter. Angela looked relieved, thinking the tension had passed, but Emily's mind was already 3 steps ahead. The days that followed were a blur of careful plotting. Emily kept up her facade, pretending everything was normal while secretly laying the groundwork for her revenge. She texted Daniel using her fake account, setting up a meeting at a cafe. She planned to confront him, subtly threatening to reveal his affair with Angela unless he ended things immediately. For Ethan, Emily decided to attend the networking event, where she could observe him in his element. She wanted to see what kind of man he truly was before deciding how to dismantle his life. And as for Angela, Emily began leaving subtle clues that she knew the truth. An overheard phone call accidentally left on speaker, a pair of Daniel's forgotten sunglasses placed where Angela couldn't miss them. Each move was calculated to unnerve her mother, to make her squirm under the weight of her guilt. Emily was patient, but she was relentless. She wouldn't stop until all 3 of them felt the same pain she did. This was only the beginning. Emily sat in the corner booth of a quiet cafe, her hood pulled low and her sunglasses concealing most of her face. She drummed her fingers on the table, nerves and anticipation intertwining in her chest. The air smelled faintly of coffee and pastries, but she wasn't here for comfort. She was here to take her first step in dismantling the people who had betrayed her. The doorbell jingled as someone entered, and Emily's heart skipped a beat. Daniel walked in, scanning the room. He was taller than she remembered, his athletic frame drawing glances from a few patrons. He wore a casual gray t-shirt and dark jeans, exuding a relaxed confidence. "Danielle?" he asked, approaching Emily's booth. Emily suppressed a grim smile. "That's me," she said, pitching her voice slightly higher to match the persona of the fake account she'd created. Daniel slid into the seat across from her, flashing a grin that had likely charmed dozens of women before. "Nice to meet you. You look different from your pictures." Emily shrugged. "Oh, I prefer to keep things low-key in person." Daniel chuckled, clearly oblivious to the trap he was walking into. "Fair enough. So, what made you interested in personal training? You looking to get stronger, leaner, or just healthier overall?" Emily leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Actually, I wanted to talk about my mom." Daniel's easy smile faltered. "Your mom?" Emily pulled down her hood and removed her sunglasses, locking eyes with him. "Angela Harper. Remember her?" Daniel's face drained of color, his confident demeanor crumbling. "Emily? What is this?" "You tell me," Emily said, her voice cold and steady. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're having an affair with my mother. And I'm here to make sure it stops." Daniel glanced around the cafe, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "Keep your voice down," he hissed. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand plenty," Emily interrupted. "You're a lying, cheating coward who thought he could sneak around without anyone noticing. But guess what? I noticed. And if you don't end things with her immediately, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are." Daniel leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "This isn't what you think," he said weakly. "Your mom, Angela, she's, what, lonely, vulnerable? Save it," Emily snapped. "She's my mother. She's supposed to be better than this. And so are you, but clearly you're not." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Listen, I'll end it, okay? I'll tell her it's over. But you have to promise not to tell anyone. Emily tilted her head, studying him. You're afraid of me ruining your life. But tell me, Daniel, does your girlfriend know about Angela? Or are you lying to her too? Daniel's eyes widened. How did you? I know everything, Emily said sharply. And if you don't break it off, I'll make sure your girlfriend knows, your boss knows, hell, even your clients at the gym will know. Do I make myself clear? Daniel nodded, his face pale. Crystal. Emily stood, slipping her sunglasses back on. Good. You have until tomorrow to end it. If I find out you're still sneaking around, you'll regret it. She turned and walked out of the cafe, her heart pounding. It had been her first direct confrontation, and while it left her shaken, she also felt a surge of power. 1 down, 2 to go. Angela, Ethan, and Daniel had underestimated her. That was their first mistake. Angela Harper stood at the kitchen counter, chopping vegetables for dinner, her mind drifting. For the past few days, things had felt off. Emily's cold stares, the subtle tension in the air, it was like walking on a knife's edge. Angela couldn't shake the feeling that her carefully constructed double life was beginning to crack. The buzz of her phone on the countertop pulled her out of her thoughts. It was a text from Daniel. She smiled instinctively, but the smile faded as she read his message. Angela, we need to talk. I can't do this anymore. Her heart sank. She read the message twice, her hands trembling. She quickly typed back. What do you mean? Are you okay? Let's meet and talk about this. The response was swift and curt. There's nothing to talk about. This has to stop. I'm sorry. Angela stared at the screen, the weight of the words pressing down on her. Panic bubbled in her chest. What had changed? Just days ago, Daniel had been as eager as ever, stealing moments with her, whispering promises that made her feel alive again. Now, he was pulling away without explanation. She dialed his number, but it went straight to voicemail. Frustrated, she sent another text. Please, just tell me what's going on. Did something happen? The reply came minutes later. I can't explain. Just know that it's over. Don't contact me again. Angela slumped against the counter, her chest tightening. The abruptness, the finality, it didn't make sense. She replayed their last conversation in her mind, searching for clues, but there was nothing. Everything had seemed fine. A sudden noise behind her made her jump. She turned to see Emily standing in the doorway, her arms crossed, a knowing look on her face. Rough day? Emily asked, her tone deceptively casual. Angela forced a smile, trying to mask her distress. Just dealing with some work stuff. What about you, sweetheart? How was your day? Emily didn't answer right away. She stepped closer, her eyes locked on her mother's. You seem distracted lately. Anything you want to share? Angela's pulse quickened. I'm fine, Emily. Just a lot on my plate. Why do you ask? Emily shrugged, leaning against the counter. No reason. It's just, I saw your phone buzzing. Seemed like an important text. Angela's throat went dry. Did Emily know? She couldn't. Could she? Angela swallowed hard, forcing a light laugh. It's nothing. Just a colleague canceling a meeting. Emily's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a faint, unsettling smile. A colleague, huh? Must be a pretty close colleague if you're this upset. Angela froze, her composure slipping. Emily, I don't know what you're implying. Oh, I think you do, Emily interrupted, her voice cutting like a knife. You're not as good at hiding things as you think, Mom. Angela's heart stopped. The room seemed to close in around her. Emily, what are you talking about? I'm talking about Daniel, Emily said, her tone dripping with venom. Your personal trainer. The one you've been sneaking around with. Angela's face went pale. Emily, Save it, Emily snapped. I already know everything. I saw you. And now, I'm making sure you and your little boy toy don't get to play house anymore. Angela stared at her daughter, stunned. You talked to Daniel? Emily smiled coldly. Let's just say he won't be seeing you again. You're welcome. Angela's legs felt weak, and she gripped the counter to steady herself. Emily, you don't understand. No, you don't understand, Emily said, her voice rising. You destroyed this family, and for what? A couple of flings. You think you can just do whatever you want and not face the consequences. Tears filled Angela's eyes, but Emily showed no mercy. She turned on her heel and stormed out of the kitchen, leaving Angela alone with her guilt, her shame, and the realization that her perfect world was crumbling faster than she could salvage it. Angela sank to the floor, clutching her phone. For the first time in years, she felt utterly powerless. And she knew this was only the beginning. Emily stood in her room, staring at the collection of evidence she had gathered over the past week. Photos, screenshots, voice memos, everything she needed to bring down Angela, Daniel, and Ethan. The betrayal had festered inside her like poison, and now it was time to strike. She started with her mother. Angela had spent the past few days walking on eggshells, desperately trying to reconnect with Emily. But Emily had kept her distance, waiting for the perfect moment. That moment arrived on a quiet Sunday morning. Angela was in the living room, sipping coffee and reading a book when Emily entered, her laptop tucked under her arm. Angela looked up, her face lighting up with cautious hope. Emily, good morning, Angela said, her voice soft. Emily didn't respond. She placed her laptop on the coffee table and opened it, pulling up a folder labeled Truth. Angela frowned, her hands tightening around her coffee cup. What's this? Angela asked, her voice trembling. Emily clicked on the first file, a video of Angela and Daniel, taken from a hidden camera Emily had placed in the living room days earlier. The sound of their laughter and whispers filled the room. Angela's face went pale as she realized what it was. Emily, I can explain, Angela began, but Emily cut her off. Don't bother, Emily said coldly. This is just the beginning. She clicked on another file, this one a series of texts between Angela and Ethan, their flirtations laid bare. Angela's lips parted in a silent plea, but no words came out. Emily stood over her mother, her voice ice-cold. You lied to me. You lied to Dad. You ruined this family. And for what? A couple of men who don't even respect you. Emily, please, Angela begged, tears streaming down her face. I made a mistake, but you don't have to do this. Emily's gaze was unyielding. You don't get to tell me what to do anymore. Emily's next stop was Daniel. She'd promised him she'd stay quiet if he ended things with Angela, but that was a lie. She sent his girlfriend a message from her fake account, attaching screenshots of his texts with Angela. Within minutes, the girlfriend replied, devastated and furious. You're disgusting, she wrote. Don't ever contact me again. Emily smirked as she forwarded the entire conversation to Daniel. She could only imagine the panic he must have felt as his world crumbled around him. Finally, it was Ethan's turn. Emily attended the networking event he had been so proud to promote, her plan already in motion. She dressed professionally, blending in with the crowd as she sipped her drink and observed him. Ethan was charming as ever, schmoozing with clients and colleagues, completely unaware of the storm about to hit. When the moment was right, Emily approached him. Ethan, right? She asked, extending a hand. He turned, flashing his signature smile. That's me. And you are someone you should be careful around, Emily said, her tone sharp. She handed him a flash drive. This contains everything I know about you. Your little affair with Angela? The complaints from women at your office? All of it. If you don't resign by the end of the week, I'll make sure this goes public. Ethan's face darkened, his confident facade slipping. Who are you? I'm Angela's daughter, Emily said, her voice low and threatening. And I don't play games. Without waiting for a response, Emily walked away, leaving him standing in stunned silence. That evening, Emily returned home, feeling a sense of satisfaction for the first time in weeks. Angela was in the kitchen, her face pale and tear-streaked. Emily, what have you done? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I gave you what you deserved, Emily said simply. Now you get to live with the consequences. Angela reached out, but Emily stepped back. We're done, Mom. Don't talk to me unless it's to tell Dad the truth. Angela's sobs echoed through the house as Emily walked upstairs, closing her bedroom door behind her. She sat on her bed, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She'd destroyed them, just as they'd destroyed her. But as the adrenaline faded, a hollow feeling settled in her chest. She had won. But at what cost? The Harper household was eerily quiet, a house once filled with warmth now suffused with tension and silence. Emily sat at the dining table, staring out the window as the sun dipped below the horizon. The chaos she had unleashed had settled, but the scars it left were deep and raw. Angela had confessed everything to her husband, Mark, 3 nights ago. Emily had insisted, standing in the corner of the living room as her mother, broken and tearful, revealed her infidelity. Mark's face had been unreadable at first. Shock, anger, betrayal, and heartbreak flashing across his features. When Angela finished, Mark said nothing. He had simply stood and walked out of the house, slamming the door behind him. Now, 3 days later, his absence lingered like a wound that wouldn't heal. Angela hadn't left her bedroom, the weight of her guilt crushing her into isolation. Emily had avoided her entirely. She didn't want apologies or explanations. She wanted distance. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway jolted Emily from her thoughts. She stood, peeking through the curtain to see Mark stepping out of the car, his face lined with exhaustion. Emily's stomach churned. She hadn't expected him to return so soon, if at all. Mark entered the house, his gaze heavy as it landed on Emily. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low. Emily nodded and followed him into the living room. They sat across from each other, the weight of unspoken words filling the space between them. "I know you're angry," Mark began, his voice steady but strained. "I'm angry too. But what you did, Emily, it wasn't right." Emily's eyes widened. "Dad, she betrayed you. She betrayed us. I had to." "No," Mark interrupted, his tone firm. "You didn't have to do anything. I'm the one she hurt. This was my marriage, my battle. What you did wasn't justice, it was revenge. And revenge doesn't heal anything. It just leaves more pain." Emily clenched her fists, tears pricking her eyes. "She destroyed our family. How could you expect me to just stand by and do nothing?" Mark sighed, leaning forward. "I don't expect you to forgive her, Emily. I don't even know if I can. But what you did, exposing her, humiliating her, dragging those men into it, it's not the kind of person I raised you to be." The words stung, cutting deeper than Emily had expected. She looked away, unable to meet his gaze. "I just wanted her to feel what I felt," she whispered. Mark softened, his voice gentler now. "I know. But hurting her didn't make you feel better, did it?" Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The room was filled with the sound of Emily's quiet sobs and the weight of unspoken forgiveness. Finally, Mark stood and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'm not sure what happens next," he said. "But we'll figure it out. Together." Upstairs, Angela sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the crumpled photo of their family she'd been holding for hours. She heard the murmur of voices below, the faint sound of Emily crying, and her own tears fell harder. She wanted to go down, to beg for another chance, but shame anchored her in place. Emily's revenge had torn her life apart, but in the ruins, Angela saw the truth. She had been selfish, reckless, and blind to the damage she'd caused. Now, all she could do was hope that time would heal the wounds she had inflicted on the people she loved most. Weeks passed, and the Harper family tried to find a new normal. Mark moved into a small apartment, uncertain if he could ever trust Angela again. Angela threw herself into therapy, determined to understand the choices that had led her here. And Emily, grappling with the aftermath of her revenge, began to rebuild her relationship with her father, though the chasm between her and her mother remained vast. One evening, Emily found herself sitting on the back porch, staring at the stars. Angela joined her quietly, sitting a few feet away. They didn't speak for a long time. "I'm sorry," Angela finally said, her voice breaking. For everything. Emily didn't respond at first, her gaze fixed on the sky. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said eventually. Not yet. Angela nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. I understand. For the first time in weeks, the silence between them wasn't heavy. It was tentative, fragile, but it was a start. And sometimes, a start was all you could hope for. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like this video for more true crime video. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and theories in the comments section below. Take care and see you in the next video.